Hi, everybody. So we are very, very happy to introduce to Maddy. He's here already. Thank you, Maddy, for making time to be here with us. For those who don't know Maddy, she's from Boston. She's like a very cool developer, and you have a lot of thanks for her because she works on the DevTool team at Microsoft. And also she's working on Maui. So if you have any questions, she's gonna be there for us. So I don't know, Seba, what else can you tell us about our cool speaker today?
I'm going to say a few words in Spanish for all the Latin people here. Hola a toda la comunidad latinoamericana. Estamos muy contentos de contar con la presencia de Maddy hoy. No es común en los eventos en Sudamérica de tener presencia desde el equipo interno de Xamarin, así que estamos súper contentos y están súper invitados a hacer sus preguntas. Si no manejan el inglés, no importa, porque vamos a traducirlas para ustedes. Entonces, siéntanse libres de utilizar el chat para poder comunicarse y hacer las preguntas. And well, that's all. I think that you can take the control, Maddy.
Yes, all yours. Thank you again.
Awesome. Let's do it. Well, all right. Welcome, everybody, to Xamarin Assemble. This is my first time with Xamarin Assemble. I have loved seeing all the tweets and the Instagram posts and everything in the past couple weeks. And I'm here to kind of kick off the event by looking into the future of Xamarin. So we've had quite a few events over the past few months. We've had the .NET Conf that was focused on Xamarin in March. We had MS Build, which had a bunch of Xamarin and .NET content. And I really wanted to dive a little bit deeper on some of those things in this keynote to prepare for the rest of the sessions we have over the next few days, which is awesome. So I already got a great intro. Thank you, everybody. I'm Maddy. I'm a program manager at Microsoft. I work on, like our lovely hosts said, dev tools. And I like to tell myself that I'm the productivity person. So I try to make you as productive as possible when you write Xamarin apps. Whether or not I do that all the time, it's hit or miss, but I'm pretty close. I think we're doing pretty good. And if you follow me on Twitter, my handle's right here. You might have seen me tweet out some pictures this morning because just about a year ago was the Xamarin Developer Summit. And that was in Houston. And I got to meet some of you there. I see some people in the chat that I was able to meet, which is really exciting. And it was a great event, but it feels like an eternity ago. I'm sure you all are very aware of how much the world has changed in the past 6 months, year. But at the Xamarin level, I can't even believe how much has changed just within our community, how much we've grown, and how great and bright our future looks. In the Dev Summit keynote, I thought it could never get better than that, what we showed there. And then I was making this today, and I was like, oh man, we've got so much stuff going on. I'm so excited. And before I look into the future and show you in my crystal ball, I wanted to take some time to celebrate all of the things that we have accomplished since around this time last year, roughly. And I'm sure a lot of you here are familiar with Xamarin, are familiar with how it works, but it enables you to use C# to access all of your iOS, Android, and Windows APIs that you could possibly want using .NET. And with the latest Xamarin.Forms updates, you can even write your UI in C#. You can use storyboards and XML for native UI if you're interested in doing that. And you can share your UI using C# and XAML and common .NET patterns like MVVM, using Xamarin.Forms. And we have our cross-platform device API library, Xamarin Essentials, that lets you do things like GPS and secure storage and file system access. And all of these things have grown over, the past however long they've been around, but with the mission and the goal to delight developers. And the people that we're here to delight are also the reason that we have made so much progress. So I wanted to start by saying thank you to everybody. We started showing this kind of slide last year at Xamarin Developer Summit, and we started updating it, and then we had to update it so frequently, it was just not able to be updated reasonably anymore. So if you're not on here, I'm sorry, send me an email. I'm happy to add more faces until we run out of room. But I wanted to start off by saying thank you to our amazing community. We're so excited. I love reading. I was just saying, like, all the blogs that you all post, the tweets. You all test our features and say, this is good. This isn't so good. Oh, you should do this. That'll be really helpful. And that is really how we've been able to drive this product forward. And kind of in the theme of 2020, there has really been an explosion of live streaming, especially in the Xamarin community. So you can check out this link. We are updating this all the time, so feel free to tweet me, email me, and we can add you to this list as well. But we've tried to collect all the people who stream Xamarin or .NET related content, so you can still learn from your office or kitchen or wherever you're working from right now. So we've got more community members than ever, blogs, more streamers than ever, and of course we have our amazing, thriving ecosystem of frameworks and libraries and tools. And it is ever growing. We used to have like 3 or 4 different slides that we did this. So I tried to squish them all into one and then I ran out of room. So I'm missing a lot. But we are so happy to see how much our vendors and all the frameworks that are part of the Xamarin and .NET ecosystem have grown with us, and how excited all of you are given your feedback with all the things to come. So all the things, we've done a bunch of improvements in tooling. I'll talk about some of these, but not a ton of them. I wanted to kind of put the kitchen sink up here, put the whole list of everything so that you could see that we are doing a lot of stuff, way more than we could fit into a 1-hour keynote. And likewise with Xamarin.Forms, I mean, the amount of things, whether it's little teeny things like teeny grid row column simplification syntax to huge things like shell, to visual. I mean, all these things have happened over the past year in Xamarin.Forms. It's been incredible. And I know I mentioned Xamarin Essentials earlier too. It's still going. I think we're up to 1.5 is the version we're at. And there are a ton of proposals and great things going on with Essentials as well, making it easier than ever to write your code once and run it anywhere. And we want to make it easier than ever for people to get started. So one thing that was great about MS Build this year is that there was a lot of talk about Xamarin and .NET, and a lot of people wanted to try Xamarin, and they were like, hey, where do we get started? Well, we point you to Xamarin.com, right? And that's where we have some of the blogs and tutorial videos. I know Brandon Minnick is giving a talk after this, and he's helped a lot with the tutorial content. But we also wanted to make sure once you actually click download that the experience to get started is as easy as possible, even if you don't know where to find all the content. So we've made it twice as fast to install and way smaller, which is awesome. Less disk space is always the best. But we've also started revamping the new app experience with these really helpful things for people who might be only familiar with desktop. So when you look at a desktop app, there's usually like one kind of navigation. Maybe it's just file edit across the top. With mobile, there's all these different things we use. We use flyouts and tabs. And now you can actually visualize these while you're making the project. And this is super exciting. This is just starting to roll out right now. And this is James Montemagno actually going through and testing this for us. We have come up with a walkthrough for the first time you build a Xamarin app, getting started with deploying it. So you might remember the first time you picked up an Android device or had to make an Android emulator. It could have been overwhelming. There's a lot of steps here and there, but we talk you through it right now. We walk you through it right in the IDE. You have no guesswork, and you'll be up and running faster than ever. So click, oh, and the wrong click. Boop. All right. We think about developer productivity. Once you're in the product, once you're with your new app, you've got it deployed and whatever. I like to think about productivity at 4 different pillars. So one is coding faster. And that's things like IntelliCode and multi-targeting and going into source code with SourceLink. And it just makes the actual code writing experience even easier. And then there's building and deploying faster. So optimizing the compilers, optimizing the deploy time, making sure that when we rebuild things, we only rebuild what needs to be rebuilt. Things like startup tracing for starting the app faster. So utilizing ahead of time compilation and just-in-time compilation the way that makes sense for your app and your development, whether you're debugging or in release, and shrinking the app size too. And of course, iterating faster. So it would be great if you never had to build and start the app again. Why don't we just keep it running? You can change some things, see how it goes. That's kind of the suite of productivity tools I like to look at. So I'm going to jump into Visual Studio. We're going to do a quick demo here and show you some of these things working together. So I have to unlock this phone here, pull up this app Reflector. So this is an app called Reflector. I think it's by a company called Air Squirrels, but it's very cool because you can screen mirror your iPhone to your PC right here, like as if it's AirPlay. So I have my phone right here. I just typed in the code and then I'll drag it over from this screen. Nice. And I'll click out. Now you can see my iPhone. This is it. This is the phone. Minimize this. And this is my Monkey Finder app. So you can see my iPhone pops up right here as a deploy target. So I still have the same things I would. I have the simulator or remote device if I was paired to a Mac. But I'm not actually paired to a Mac right now. Where's my pair to Mac menu? Oh, well. I'm not actually paired to a Mac right now, so I can just click debug, and it'll go straight to my iPhone over the USB cable. Give it a second to build up. Got some Android X things going on down here. I haven't updated this app in a little bit, except for the Xamarin.Forms version. And then it's going to ask me to launch it. I'm going to click it. It's going to pop right up very quickly. And so I don't have images in this app. I'm sorry. But I do want to change this button really quick because I realized that I forgot to put the style on this button. And it doesn't look good. It looks like a blue text on a yellow background way down here. Hopefully it's not cutting off on the screen or anything. So what I want to do is add a style to this. And I've predefined some styles in this app in XAML. So I'm just going to type it in my static resource. And then it pops right up, button outline. I'm going to hit save. Just like that, my page refreshes and I have this new beautiful button with the style that I created. I can go ahead, I can change this text. I can change it from search to find more monkeys, hit save, watch it reload. And then I can go in and edit any of these things in here and hit save, and Hot Reload is going to do it for me, going to update it for me. And what's great with Hot Reload is we're actually still working on adding features to it. We're adding things like a live visual tree so you can see all of the elements in this UI laid out. And I can go in and type anything, type a space after any of these things, and you can see the star pops up. That's IntelliCode. I know I mentioned that. That is what's telling me what other people use. So a lot of people like to add padding to grids. So instead of me having to search through everything, it pops up on top and say, hey, you might be thinking of padding if you forgot the word. And yeah, so this system here, plugging in the iPhone and hitting debug, is called Hot Restart. And Hot Restart is great because you can plug your iPhone in. But the big perk of it is actually how quickly you can get up and running again with the app. So if I were to go into my Solution Explorer here, move this phone over, and I went into my view model, and I looked around, I could go ahead and I could change things in here. So maybe I'll just get rid of this code here. And get rid of this else. Oh, whoa. Oh, it's going to delete it. And then get rid of this else. Make sure my squigglies go away and hit restart. Hit the restart button right here. So what this is doing is I'm actually taking away getting the data from the internet. And I am putting in these 3 sample monkeys from my view model. So I'm going to hit restart. Oh, I should have saved that. I think it saves for me. Boop, boop, boop. Give it a few seconds. You can see it's deploying it right into my iPhone right now. Super snappy. It's going to ask me to launch it again. I'm going to launch it. And, oh, let's stop and restart it. Boop, boop, boop. Sometimes I get too ambitious with Hot Restart. Okay, I must be adding it somewhere else. But what's great about Hot Restart is you can actually go in and change your C# and it's going to update it for you. So let's see where I have this loading in. Monkeys. Yeah, okay. So something's going on weird here. What I'll do is I'll actually uninstall it and reinstall it from scratch. Go back into my view model. Let me hide this for a second. Go back in here. Double check everything. Okay, it's busy. Monkeys don't exist. Monkeys, monkeys, monkeys. Hit save. Right. You can see I'm in preview VS. I'm always in the latest stuff, especially working from home. I'm like, oh, I have to have all the latest things. So sometimes I break things unknowingly. But what's great about Hot Restart is I don't actually have to pair to a Mac right now to get this back up and running. It's just going to do it. It's already redeployed. I can already click it. Go ahead. No? All right. Weird. So we'll have to figure that out. I'll have to put it on GitHub after. Very peculiar. But it might be caching something on the iPhone, which is pretty cool. There's a lot of great things in the new iOS. And the big thing with this is that I'm actually editing things with my iPhone plugged right in. So I'm going to switch back to the slides for a little bit, and maybe I'll let this reinstall in the background. And hide the iPhone. And talk a little bit about what you were just seeing with Hot Restart. So like I said, it's an iPhone, it's plugged right in. But the thing that it does is it lets you edit your resources, your code, and your references, and it has a much faster build and deploy cycle. I was actually talking about this on Twitter, like right before this keynote. So you can get started in, if you look at these stats down here, the initial build without Hot Restart is almost 3-4 minutes. The initial build is 20 seconds with Hot Restart, which is way, way, way faster. And my favorite stats here are the incremental ones. So the incremental build and incremental deploy would take together, that's actually rebuilding everything and repackaging it and then putting it on the phone, about a minute. But with Hot Restart, it's like 10 seconds. So that's how I can actually go ahead and break my code and test it multiple times really quickly, instead of having to wait 1 or 2 minutes for my app to rebuild every time. And it's just iOS on Windows right now, but we are looking at ways to expand it. We are working on Android on Windows. That's kind of the first thing we're working on. And then we're also thinking about how we can bring these to Mac. So making sure that you have a really fast Mac rebuild and redeploy experience for iPhones, for Androids, and pair to Mac. And then at some point when we're confident that it works really well and that people love it, we want to just make it happen every time. So you don't even have to think about using a Hot Restart or not. It just does it. And another picture I tweeted this morning was actually the announcement for XAML Hot Reload. And this was at Xamarin Developer Summit last year. And it was right before Hot Restart we came out with it. But with Hot Reload, you can change your XAML, hit save, and see it updated. And we launched that a year ago, and the feedback has been incredible. And you can see some of the tweets here. I love the fire emojis everywhere. I think that's the best part. But Hot Restart came out shortly after, and together you now have these two hot tools, I call them, where you can change your XAML, hit save, see that update really quickly, and then change your C#, hit restart, and be up and running again. So your inner development loop, we call it, is faster than ever. So we're going to talk a little bit about what has been happening in Xamarin.Forms as well. So some of the biggest things that have happened over the past year in Xamarin.Forms are Shell, visual and material design, and the collection view. So Shell is this simplified navigation system. It gives you tabs and flyouts. All of our new templates that I showed earlier are actually based on Shell now. And it's made it really, really easy to handle navigation in your code from one file. And we're still working on it. There's more improvements I'll share a little bit later. The next thing is visual and material design. So taking native controls, things that look like an iPhone button or an Android button, and giving them material design so they actually look the same on both platforms. You told us, hey, like sometimes I want my app to look iOS-y or Android-y, sometimes I don't. So we gave you material design and visual so that you can easily make it look the same if you want to. And we have something like the collection view, which lets you do lists and grids, lazy loading, all these amazing things. Here's another example of collection view that I think is really gorgeous. It's a chat app and some of the snippets. And our community has been so great about trying out these new things and looking at the samples. So I actually wanted to highlight some of the cool things that I've seen for some of these features. So this is a Shell app, and the GitHubs are on the bottom here if you want to check these out. But you can see it's got the top tabs, it's got the bottom tabs. You could add a flyout there. This is James Montemagno's turnip tracking app. This is using the visual material design system. He's also using the checkbox, which he contributed, which is awesome. We love the checkbox. The carousel view, which kind of came right after the collection view, but it's meant more for images. So when you think about online shopping and you go through all the pictures of things and an item you clicked on, that's a carousel view. Now that's built into Xamarin.Forms as well. And this is making me hungry. It's dinner time in Boston. The swipe view, which gives you contextual quick actions. So this is what you would see in an email app when you need to delete emails. You can do this in Xamarin.Forms now. This came out this year. The expander lets you do easily grouped and beautifully animated lists, so you can group all your things together and keep your breads and dairies separate. C# UI, so being able to write your UI in C# with a very declarative, natural feeling syntax. And Brandon Minnick, who I mentioned a little bit earlier, he's got to talk right after this about this stuff, which is very cool. And more recently, you might have seen the preview of Shapes. I'm very excited about Shapes. You can pretty much draw whatever you want now, built right into Xamarin.Forms. It's a first-party API. And this is my last quick click slide. Light and dark mode, of course. So being able to quickly change themes in your apps and change the theme of your phone and make sure that your user's experience reflects that appropriately. You can see that's also using the checkbox there. And these are all the things that are first party to Xamarin.Forms. These are all just a handful of the things that we've added that are built right in. But of course, our community has gone above and beyond with all of these things and made even more incredible things. So shared transitions, Neo controls, that's a part of this new trend of things looking on the screen like they look in real life. So you can see the buttons, like feel like you can press them. Pancake view, which is hugely popular, lets you kind of make these really nice custom frames. And Sharpnado, which does a whole lot of stuff. I would check it all out. I wish I could spend all day talking about all these things, but I can't. And all these apps are gorgeous. So you might want to figure out where you can get their source code and maybe copy some of it, draw some inspiration from it. So I highly recommend looking at Javier Suarez Ruiz's Good Looking UI repo. He's got a bunch of things. So many. This one's more food stuff, makes me hungry. But this is a really great resource for you to go and see how people are starting to already use these controls and these built-in new features and third-party controls to make these beautiful Xamarin apps. So the line we started to use at .NET Conf in March, and you can go back and watch all those talks as well. They're still online. Is with Xamarin, you can build fast, beautiful native apps in less time, in less code, and within a thriving ecosystem. And hopefully all of those befores you just saw prove that to you. But we want to make sure that this is kept up when we're looking into the future of Xamarin. And I want to talk a little bit about how we're going to do that for the rest of this session. So first and foremost, we're coming to the end of Xamarin.Forms 4. We're at 4.7. 4.8 comes out in August. So Xamarin.Forms 5 is coming out in a few months. And with that is going to be some awesome new stuff. Shell is getting a huge facelift. The big thing that I'm excited about here is the new kind of routing methodology. You can like command line .. to go back a page. You don't have to name the page or anything. It's just going to pop it off. It's very cool. Improving and putting into stable and general availability shapes and paths. So what you saw with the shapes before, just continuing to work on that and making it stable. I'm so excited. This is going to add so many new things for Xamarin apps. The gradient brush, which actually, this is funny. Last year at Xamarin Developer Summit, I was convinced that the people who voted, we had a voting booth for what feature people wanted. And I was convinced gradients were going to win. I was like, I want gradients so bad. Gradients are the best. And it came in, I think, second to last. But I am getting gradients now, a year and a few months. So we will have the gradient brush built right in. Tab view, so being able to customize tabs even further. And something like the app bar. So up here you can see it's beautifully animated with an image instead of just a regular color or anything. And Forms is going to move to a new-ish release schedule where we have minor releases every 6 weeks. And then service releases that are, as they're needed. So I know sometimes we get 3 or 4 service releases. Sometimes we get a little bit more. But Xamarin.Forms 4.7 is out now. And 4.8 will be coming in August. 4.9 will be September. And then 6 weeks later, early November 2020 is when you're going to be getting Xamarin.Forms 5. Now, if you saw any of the build announcements, you might be wondering, hey, I've heard some other rumors. I've heard about some Hawaiian island somewhere. But before we get into that, I want to talk a little bit about the history behind it and my whole theme of looking back and looking to the future. This cracks me up. If you remember what an iPhone looks like 12 years ago, 11 years ago, it's very different than the iPhones we have today, right? But in 2009, MonoTouch, which was .NET for the iPhone, launched. But at this point, this was before Xamarin. Mono was an open source project. It was totally removed from Microsoft, just building on their technology. But over the past 11 years, we've kind of converged to this story where .NET is your platform for building anything. So .NET, it's free, it's cross-platform, it's open source now, and you can build all different types of applications. You can use C# and F#. You can use Visual Studio for Mac, Visual Studio Code, the command line, all these amazing things, depending on what you want to develop for. And it enables you to be more productive by building feature-rich applications for any device and with great performance. And .NET Standard brings it all together so that the ecosystem can share all these libraries easily across all the different types of applications you're building. And the platform was open sourced in 2014, and it's continued to grow and be advanced since. And Microsoft has worked really closely with the community to extend all the capabilities of .NET to cover things like Linux and machine learning and AI, which I think is really awesome. And Xamarin's always been the mobile part of this. So Xamarin, built on Mono, similar but not quite the same to .NET, uses some of the .NET Standard stuff, doesn't use all the .NET Standard stuff. It can be confusing. So we've started looking at this vision of one .NET. And over the releases of .NET 5 to .NET 6, we want to take all these things, that animation went by very quickly, but we want to take .NET Framework and .NET Core and Mono and Xamarin and merge them into one .NET. And with one .NET, you're going to get a single SDK. You're going to have a unified tool chain. You're going to have cross-platform native UI. So for devices, cross-platform web UI, investments into native cloud development, and of course, all the improvements that we already work on with .NET. Our .NET 5 timeline was originally when we wanted to have all of this, but given the situation globally, we've actually decided to kind of use .NET 5 as the wave we're riding to .NET 6, which is when we will be delivering all of them, all of these things. And our vision, which is that one .NET is going to simplify the platform and choices for .NET developers, and it's going to give you a single stack that supports the best solutions for all modern workloads. Now, I said a little bit about Hawaii, maybe. Said a little bit about this cross-platform native UI stack. Well, what is that? It's .NET MAUI. It's a cross-platform native UI stack for any device from a single code base and project system, including mobile and desktop, and it is the evolution of Xamarin.Forms. So I've heard a lot of questions about this. Xamarin.Forms is not changing or going away. It's evolving into .NET MAUI, and it is becoming the cross-platform native UI stack for all of .NET. So for all those targets you saw before, slowly but surely. It's targeting .NET 6. The previews are going to be end of this year, early next year. But the idea is that you will be able to build the beautiful native UIs you saw earlier in this presentation for any device using MAUI. So I have a video here, and hopefully it's going to start playing. Yes, it is. And this is actually a walkthrough that my good friend Scott did for Build, and he's making a MAUI app. He's going to open right into it. And you can see on the side here, he only has one project. So this is that single project kind of concept. There's no Android or iOS head projects, as we call them, anymore. And in here, you can see he has the platforms. So that's where you're targeting those things now. You have resources, so shared things like fonts and images. And then everything else is pretty much the same. You have your main page and your app.xaml, nothing fancy. And if we click a little bit in, he's going to go ahead and deploy this onto Windows, onto the desktop. Give it a second. Pop, pop, pop. Let all your diagnostic tools pop up. And right there, we have a UWP app running with Maui. You can interact with it and play around with it. All these values are updating. It's the same UI. You can drag and drop or drag and resize all these beautiful things. And then he's going to stop debugging here. And we're going to give him a second to boop, 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 click into his iPhone, which is very exciting. We saw this earlier with hot restart. He's going to deploy it. And so Scott's doing the same thing with his iPhone. With the hot restart, the only requirement is that you have an Apple developer account. So you have to pay for it. But, you know, that's what you need to do to make an iPhone app. And that makes sense. And he pulled up his phone on Reflector as well and is using the exact same app. Just like that, super quick, all from one code base with nothing fancy or complicated about it. So let's see. Boop, boop, boo. We're going to click. Yes. So here's Scott showing off all the fonts and images in the shared app in a single project. That's that .NET icon he has. And it's in one place. And we're actually looking at Xamarin.Forms 5 as a way to start testing some of these things. So the shared images might come to Xamarin.Forms 5 as something. You drop it in once, we resize it for you. And then we're going to start expanding that to things like fonts. Yes. And then here are his target platforms with the specific code, the platform specific code. So we love our 100% native API access. We love that anything you can do in Swift or Java or Kotlin, you can do with Xamarin. So you'll still have access to all of the native under the hood functionality. Boop. These are some more of the things that Scott was showing in that. This is now David's iPhone, though. But we're consolidating all the targets. So you won't have to switch between iPhone CPU and Android and Windows. It'll just all be there at the same place. We're using SDK style projects in multi-targeting. So you have .NET 5, iOS, .NET 5 General, which is going to be desktop, .NET 5 Android. And you can see that we have some new namespaces here, which we'll get to in a second. And then here is just more of a call out of what Scott showed there with the specific shared resources and platforms. One thing we want to enable is all different types of developers to work how you like to work. And part of that is the command line. I actually, when I started learning to code, I only used the command line. IDEs were totally foreign to me. But when I saw this, I was super excited because you can just go .NET new Maui and you'll have a new Maui app. And it pops up right there with all the files you need. And this is, I think this is a completely separate demo and prototype. So this still has the multiple projects, but that would be kind of what we work to bring these two things together. So it's a single project here, single solution, and we don't have to deal with the Android or iOS stuff. And then we want to make sure that you're coding the way you want to code. So MVVM is fantastic. It's super powerful. It is what powers so many enterprises and what enables an incredible amount of code reuse, not just for Xamarin developers, but for all different types of developers. But it's not something everybody knows. So if you want to get started with Xamarin, you might be overwhelmed learning all of these MVVM ideas and concepts. So instead, we want you to be able to try out using something like this, Model View Update, MVU. And it's its own version of it. It's not like pure MVU or pure MVC or whatever you want to call it, but it is a new way that you're going to be able to write apps in Xamarin. And here it's also in VS Code, which I think is awesome. So if you are interested in this kind of C# UI, I know I mentioned before, Brandon Minnick is doing his talk right after this. He's also going to be covering MVU C# UI in VS Code a little bit in the Comet project. So that would be a really good thing to check out. So what does this mean practically? It's .NET Maui. It's this evolution of Xamarin.Forms I've been saying. Well, that's just literally renaming a namespace. So Xamarin.Forms is turning into system.maui. These names aren't set in stone yet. Xamarin Essentials is turning into system.devices. So that's also going to be expanded to support more things, to support all the targets that Maui is supporting. And we'll talk about that in a second as well. instead of a file new cross-platform mobile app, it's going to be file new multi-platform app UI for .NET. And hopefully that means more people will be able to figure out how to write cross-platform apps. And we are bringing over the native as well. So I've heard a lot of, hey, like .NET MAUI is Xamarin.Forms. What happened to Xamarin iOS and Xamarin Android? They're coming along for the ride as well. They are still a huge, huge part of our story. Xamarin.Forms doesn't work without Xamarin iOS and Xamarin Android. So they're basically getting upgraded from Xamarin iOS to .NET for iOS and .NET for Android. What's cool about this is the namespaces and the APIs are unchanged. So because UIKit is named UIKit, and all the namespaces and APIs we use just inherit from what UIKit names everything, it's going to be the exact same. So you're not actually going to have a lot of code updating to do, whether it's with .NET MAUI or with .NET for iOS and .NET for Android specifically. And it's going to be an SDK style project, which means that you no longer have to install Visual Studio and to get a specific version of Xamarin iOS or Xamarin Android. You'll actually be able to install them separate from the IDE and from the project and have a couple different versions running at any time. MAUI has its own GitHub repo already, github.com/.net/MAUI. And I'm going to click through it for a second after this, but I did want to highlight this really great chart that David Ortnow put together. And it is comparing Xamarin.Forms and MAUI. So we are bumping the APIs a little bit. We are bumping the minimum version of iOS that you need to run the MAUI app that it will target. And we are adding, where is it? Mac OS as an officially supported target, which I think is great. We'll still continue to have community supported targets as we had before. So Linux is one of those, but we are totally open to suggestions and asks. I've heard a lot of questions about web, all those things. This GitHub is the place to share those things. And one of the things about MAUI that is going to be the biggest change, I think, from Xamarin.Forms is that we're redoing all of the renderers. So the things that actually take your stack layout and make it into a stack layout, or take a collection view and turn it into a collection view, we're rebuilding those so that they can be as optimized as possible no matter what device you're on. And I think that's going to be a huge, huge win if you're one of those people who builds list views and it's like, wow, my list view is taking forever to render because it's like a list view with a stack layout and then a stack layout and then a grid and then all. This is going to be great for you. And it'll also make it more flexible cross-platform. We're adding those new app models. So we have reactive UI right now with community support. It's fantastic. But we also want to make sure that we have MVU and Blazor app models totally co-working well with Xamarin.Forms. And then you're going to get that single project, that multi-targeting, and the multi-window experiences that I showed before. Now, like I said, this is going to be .NET 6. So that .NET 5 to .NET 6 wave, I think MAUI wave over, is going to be when you start to see a lot of these changes happening in the public, and you'll be able to start trying them out in previews. But this is not going to be stable until .NET 6. Right now, you get Xamarin from NuGet in the Visual Studio installer. You're going to get it from .NET, from the command line. We're going to have these new SDK-style projects, and we're still going to support the same tools that you use today, Visual Studio 2019. And below there, it's VS Code. We're investigating all these great things. One thing I wanted to clear up, and I have gotten a lot of questions about this, is what happens to my Xamarin app? So maybe I want to start a new app right now. Maybe I have a new client coming in. Do I use Xamarin? Do I wait? Do I just not? Should I do a native app? Xamarin.Forms is still absolutely, up until the day that .NET 6 ships, Xamarin.Forms is absolutely the way you should still be file new, creating a new app. Yes, there are going to be changes in MAUI, but for most people and for most apps, there's really not going to be much you have to do besides maybe target a slightly higher API version. We are getting rid of anything that is deprecated in Xamarin.Forms. So if you are still using deprecated APIs, it is time to move off of those But we are also working really closely with control vendors, that slide I showed at the beginning of all of our amazing frameworks and libraries and tools, to make sure that those things support MAUI and .NET 6 right out of the box. So that when you want to go update your app to .NET 6, that all of your tools and third-party frameworks and components come with you. And that goes back to our theme of, kind of being in lockstep with the native platforms. So the idea that when Apple announces great new features at WWDC, you might have seen, you can start using those as we develop for them. You can give them to your users. Your users will have iOS 13, is that what we're on? iOS 13 support the day that it launches. And we will give that to you as well as a preview so that you can start developing that. This is a summary of the .NET schedule. I love our little .NET bot with the lay for MAUI. I promise I will still have monkeys all over everything, although .NET bot is also really cute. So you can start getting .NET bot plushies somewhere. I don't know where to get them. But .NET 6 is going to be long-term support. .NET 5 is going to be kind of the first of this big overhaul. .NET 6 is the long-term support version. And then once .NET 6 ships, Xamarin.Forms is going to be officially supported with like bug fixes and all that for a year. So that means you have a year after .NET 6 goes stable to upgrade from Xamarin.Forms 4 to Xamarin.Forms 5 to the .NET 6 Xamarin and MAUI versions. And like I said before, yes, you should still create your Xamarin apps with Xamarin.Forms or with Xamarin Native as you want to until .NET MAUI ships. So I'm going to pull up the GitHub real quick, and then I'm actually going to open it up for questions. Oh, I put it on the wrong screen. Come here. Because I did want to show some of the cool new things that GitHub is going on. Where is it? Okay, there's my code. There's this. So we have been put into the GitHub discussions beta, which I think is really awesome. So you can go here and start discussing with people outside of issues, ask questions, and talk with our community right here about all these proposals we have for MAUI. And we also opened a bunch of issues at the beginning. So you can go in and look at here at all the enhancements people on the team, people at the community have opened, and start giving your feedback. This one that's pinned up here, the slim renderer architecture, is that new rendering system I mentioned. So I'm not going to go through all of these. There's a ton in discussions. There's a ton in issues. But if you are really, really excited about MAUI like I am, and you want to learn as much as possible about it, this is the place to go. This is where you want to go. You can start commenting on things. It's totally open. We're committed to developing this out in the open and driven by your feedback. And of course, all the information I showed today is on here as well. So I am going to put the slides back up. Here we go. Minimize this. And then I'm going to open, nope, wrong browser, the chat. And I would love to start answering any of the questions that you all have a little bit and see if I can find any. Oh my gosh, you guys are typing fast. Oh, I'm glad you're excited. I'm glad everyone likes it. Boop, boop, boop. Cross-platform Windows Mac app with same code, just recompiling is possible. Yeah. Oh, it's possible. We're getting there. Yes, Brandon was right. Xamarin Monkeys are still available in the .NET Foundation store. macOS desktop apps with Xamarin. So yes, we are looking at, we're planning on officially supporting macOS with MAUI. And I know there were a lot of announcements about, I don't know, did iPadOS get an update? I don't know if it did, but we are actively looking through the WWDC announcements to make sure we take those into consideration as well. There's work being done to host a Blazor app in Xamarin.Forms. Yes, I was very worried that I was going to be super close on time, so I didn't actually put any of the Blazor stuff in this, but I would highly recommend checking out what Michael Stone has put in the chat, the mobile Blazor bindings project. It's sharing your state between Blazor and web and native UI and Xamarin. It's very cool. Definitely check it out. Scrolling. Let's see. Boop, boop, boop. Oh, Kim is here. Hi, Kim. Yes, Kim does amazing UI work. I don't know if there's anything of Kim's in this slide deck, so I'll have to add that for next time. Boop, boop, boop. All right, I'm trying to. How can you test Maui? Great question. We are not shipping any previews of it until I think late December, early January. David's in the chat, but he can be for sure. He can tell you the answer. And then at that point, you'll be able to take it and start testing it. But it's really the first version of Maui is really just going to be Xamarin.Forms renamed. So should be pretty easy to get up and running with it. Boop, 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 boop. Oh, someone was looking at Javier's. Oh, okay. Someone was looking at Javier's repo for ideas for apps. I think that's great. What about all the per platform needs for things like splash screens, app icons, certificates, big combined project properties? That is an amazing question. We, as a PM team, have been thinking about these things a lot and don't have all of the answers yet. But I can tell you with app icons and splash screens, we're looking at the best way to handle those at the top level. So, you know, you have one app icon you probably want to use on both platforms. You have one splash screen you probably want to use on both platforms. You should be able to build that in the Xamarin.Forms project, whether it's in XAML or something else, and use that anywhere else. But you will still get your platform specifics. So if you do want it to look different on iPhone or Android, you'll be able to go into that platforms and set those things individually. Certificates, honestly, that's a good question. I'm sure we will still have the project properties somewhere for building and for that debug target, but I think that's something that we'll explore more throughout the fall. Any plans to add more robust XAML debugging? That is a great question. That is something that I've been working on a lot. You might have seen that we are adding more features to XAML Hot Reload. I didn't show them much today, but we are adding the live visual tree, which is something you get in the UWP Hot Reload. And we are making it work without having to save. So it's just going to switch just what changed, not much else. And oh my gosh, what am I forgetting? There's a whole lot of stuff coming. We actually have someone who used to work on the XAML experience team, Dimitri, who's a great PM, now working on Maui with us. So he is really excited about bringing things like inspection and how UWP does their XAML inspection over to Xamarin as well. So yes, lots. And, oh, this is another one. More robust XAML debugging from data bindings. So one of Dimitri's projects is called Data Binding Diagnostics. It's kind of a mouthful. And it is going to show you in the output window or in the error window if your XAML bindings are failing anywhere. So you can really easily find those and fix those if you're not using compiled bindings ahead of time. Unified app profiling on Maui, that's a great question. We are figuring out the best way to mobile and desktop are very different. You all know this because you use Xamarin. We're figuring out the best way to share those experiences in a way that's useful for everybody. So I don't have a good answer on profiling yet, but yes, there's only going to be one CS project with Maui. It's the new project style. It's the SDK style platforms. So updating build and version numbers, you'll have like the manifest for your app. You'll still be able to do those things. I'm not actually sure how that's going to look for the MS build tasks, but it's going to be more aligned to what .NET does now with desktop. So if you've done a Windows app where you kind of bump those things with MS build, it will be similar to that. Yeah. All right. What other questions? Keep it coming. What about with the background processes? Can you clarify a little bit what you mean about that? Background processes in your running app, in Visual Studio, anything? In Android. Oh, they will still totally be supported. Anything you can do right now in Xamarin.Forms you'll be able to do in Maui. So if there's native code you're running to do specific things, that will be, I can actually click back in these slides a little bit. Boop, boop, boop. Where are my slides? There we go. That will kind of all be handled in this section here. So you'd have your platforms, your Android platform, you could have specific things for Android and for background tasks here. And I saw that Matthew also just suggested using Shiny, which I think is fantastic, and it really helps with background processes. Yes, Kim's looking forward to cleaner project structures instead of the Frankenproj. I am too. I also like that we've officially started calling it Frankenproj. Is hot reload and hot restart supported for UWP in Xamarin.Forms? So neither of them are right now. Hot restart, we haven't really started investigating yet, but I am very excited to sneak in a comment that UWP hot reload is coming. We don't have a demo of it yet because we're working out some things, and it is going to be reliant on that new hot reload method where it does just the changes. But yes, there will be UWP hot reload soon. For Maui, is it mandatory to learn MVU apart from MVVM, since there will be so many repositories applying those two models? I don't think it is. I think MVVM is still going to be the default for most people. I know it is for me. I really don't know MVU well. But if you are someone who is interested in doing an MVU style project, then that's when you're going to have to learn MVU. It also depends on if people are building UIs in XAML or C#. C# MVVM UI is different from MVU UI, but it's a little bit more similar. The actual APIs are going to be different a little bit. So I think it's personal choice. I don't anticipate the majority of people moving off of MVVM though, personally. That is my opinion. So I'm not sure. I'm sure some people have other opinions. Is Maui really one framework to rule them all? Yes. Yes. I love that. It is. I think if you want to build .NET apps, Maui is the way you want to go forward, because you're going to have all of the things you'd have before with .NET. We are working with the WinUI team all the time. WinUI is awesome. It's not like you can sub them out for each other. I know there's been confusion with that. So WinUI actually might be the Windows target for Maui. So I would definitely leave your feedback there if you're interested in any of that Windows goodness too. Are there any plans for making VS for Mac similar to VS for Windows? Yes and no. I know that's a bad answer. Yes, because VS for Mac is going to get a lot of the features that VS for Windows gets over time. So when we ship new hot reload things, we try and bring them over to VS Mac as well. But no, because Mac is different than Windows, and Mac developers have a different workflow than Windows developers. We are trying to make it easier for you to stay on the operating system you like. So if you want to stay in VS for Windows, you can use things like hot restart to not have to go onto a Mac as much. But you will always need a Mac to deploy or to distribute your Apple app, your iOS app, because that's what Apple requires. Makes sense. Any new better ways of styling for devices, tablet versus phone versus desktop, rather than just responsive layouts? That's a good question. I am not a UI person, but I would definitely post that somewhere. Maybe if you want to write a blog and highlight some of your questions about that, that would be a really good thing for us to bring up in a community stand-up, and maybe we can have some feedback on it there. Does Visual Studio Code work with Maui for Windows and Mac OS? So right now, you can go and try out the Comet project, which is the MVU style of things with VS Code on Mac OS. So I've gotten it working on my Mac. I would have shown it today, but I can't present from my Mac and be on a call at the same time, or it gets really mad at me. So you can go and try that out. I've seen some people have it working on Windows, but it is just for that MVU kind of basic style Comet project still, and Brandon's going to be showing a little bit of that. It is not like the full Maui experience right now by any means. We love to get Maui on VS Code. I think Visual Studio 2019 is where all of our developers are right now, so we're going to focus on that. And we're going to continue to bring things over as we can. What about the vast universe of NuGet libraries for Xamarin.Forms? Great question. So a lot of the NuGet libraries for Xamarin.Forms are just .NET NuGet libraries. So those will just work. They'll just kind of come over with the .NET updates. But anything that's specific to Xamarin.Forms and relies really heavily on the Xamarin.Forms SDK, Those will need to be ported by the package owner. However, we are making sure that it is not too difficult to go from Xamarin.Forms to kind of the first version of .NET 6. We want most people to have no problems. There will definitely be problems. It is an update. Every update has problems, but we are checking, especially like largely used packages, that those things are going to still work and be ported and ready to go for all of you. And we're happy to work with people to make sure that if they are hitting issues trying to port their NuGet packages over, we can help them get through them. Are there plans for migration tools from Xamarin.Forms to Maui? So we are working on something called a try-convert tool for the project system. So moving from that Frankenproj to the SDK style projects, and that should be able to just take your project and just convert it over. But it is called try-convert because it can sometimes not work if you have a really complicated project. So we are working on that feature. When it comes to actually like migrating your Xamarin.Forms UI to Maui, I've said this a couple times, like the actual XAML API isn't going to change too much. Just make sure you're not using anything that's deprecated because those are going to go away. What's the use case for MVU? Just an easier pattern for new users to learn? Yes and no. For some people, MVU is just an easier pattern for new users to learn, but MVU also handles state differently. So there's like a state object off in oblivion somewhere. And when you change your UI, it just unplugs from the state and plugs back in. And that makes it really easy to build things like a C# hot reload, because instead of having to handle all of the state all over the world with MVVM, and I guess it's not even state, really, it's just the data that flows everywhere, data binding. With MVU, there's a state object. You literally, like, I like to think of it like you unplug it, you change the UI here, and you plug the state back in, and everything is exactly where you left it before. So can we use VS Code the same way Scott used on the one Journey to .NET presentation? Sort of. The Comet project is probably the closest way to do it, but Comet is not Xamarin.Forms. It doesn't have the same vast expanse of things. I definitely recommend trying it out if you are interested in MVU, but it's not something you can like build a full app in today. I can have dependencies for debug and others for release. Yep, totally. What about new Mac ARM processors? Will VS support? Yeah, Apple Silicon is really cool. They actually contributed to the Mono project when they announced it. So they've gotten us some of the way there. Mono is part of what powers VS Mac. That's all the information I have. But yes, you will be able to do stuff on the new Macs at some point. I don't know when. When can we use these bits in preview form? End of this year-ish, early next year, maybe, depending on the holidays and how the rest of the year goes. .NET Core can run on different platforms like Linux. Maui supports something. So we're relying on community support for Linux, but you can still build a native Linux UI if it's a GUI Linux app and use the same business logic just as you could before. Hardware management. Okay, interesting. So this question is, in matters of the hardware management of each platform, gyroscope, GPS, camera, in Maui, can the code be unified? It actually already is unified, and that's with Xamarin Essentials. So in Xamarin, you don't require particular treatment for each thing anymore for each platform. Some things you still do, but for most of the basic ones, I think everything you listed there. I'm not sure about gyroscope. Accelerometer, definitely. GPS, camera. All of that code is unified under one API using Xamarin Essentials, and that will be expanded when it's system.devices and Maui. Can we have an easy migration from Xamarin.Forms UWP to Maui WinUI? I'm not sure. It should pretty much be the same as any other XAML you're moving over. But that's a good question. We should email about that. Full Azure DevOps integration in VS for Mac, like in Windows. I'm not the person to answer that. I'm sorry. Boop, boop, boop. I'm scrolling. I only have like a second left. So does Maui replace Forms and Xamarin Native? No. Xamarin Native is not going anywhere. It's just going to be called kind of .NET for iOS and .NET for Android. The technology under the hood is the same, and the namespaces and the APIs are going to be the same. It's just we're upgrading to the SDK style projects. And I think this is my last one. Is Shell just a different way to work with Xamarin, or eventually would replace Forms? Shell is part of Forms. Shell is just the way to do navigation. So it is nothing that will replace or break. It's just a complement. So I am at time. Definitely go over to Brandon's session. Thank you so much for joining. I really appreciate it. Reach out anytime. That's my Twitter. And I hope you enjoy the rest of Xamarin Assemble.
Oh, that was an awesome presentation, Maddy. Congratulations. And also you answered all the questions. So I think that the people is really, really happy about having you in the conference. And tomorrow we are having a panel. So if you have any other questions, let's do it tomorrow.
Awesome.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, well, we are moving to the Brandon's presentation. So for Spanish speakers, gracias por acompañarnos en esta presentación. Mañana tenemos panel también del equipo de Xamarin, así que si tienen más preguntas pueden hacerlas mañana. Y nos vemos ahora en la presentación de Brandon. Thank you very much, Maddy, for the presentation. It was very, very nice and very complete about all that future of Xamarin.
Awesome. All righty. Thanks so much.
Thank you. See you tomorrow.
See ya. Bye.
Bye.